October 1913. Europe and the world is experiencing a period of great change.
It's a period during which new industries and new technologies are transforming social existence. The telegraph, wireless communication. It's a period of immense population growth and of movement of people from countryside to city and from Europe to the New World.
Europe is undergoing very rapid industrialization and urbanization, so people's lives in some cases are being changed by these kind of forces. And Europe's obviously moving in the sense that a large proportion of Europe's population are changing their residence in various ways.
Immigrants from all parts of Europe are looking for a new life in the new world. Many are trying to escape extreme poverty, rigid social division, and religious persecution.
Add to this the fact that competition between shipping lines was depressing the cost of the passage, and that again helps to explain why there were so many migrants.
October 2nd, 1913. The steamship Volturno leaves the Dutch port of Rotterdam. Built as a cargo boat in 1906, it also carries passengers, with a stopover in Halifax and New York.
Volturno was a very hard-working tramp, not a luxury liner. Rather, she was there for the working class and for the regular trade of carrying cargoes and people economically across the North Atlantic.
Captain Francis Inch is in charge of the 93 crewmen on board. This is his first command, a position he has held for only a month. His first officer is H.P. Miller from New York. Miller's wife is also at sea, on her way home from visiting relatives in England. She is on another passenger ship, the Kroonland, because of a rule which forbids wives from sailing on the same ship as their husbands. The Volturno carries enough lifeboats and rafts for 1,000 occupants. On this trip, there are just half that many passengers, 562.
They're going on a long sea voyage, for which they have no experience at all. I mean, most of these people have never left the village before they traveled across the Atlantic.
Frida Greyboys is among them, sailing to New York with her young son and daughter to meet her husband, who left Russia 8 months earlier.
The ones that came over in the Volturno was my grandmother, Frida, my dad, Nissel, and my aunt, Clara, or Kriva, according to the manifest. They were steerage passengers, and from other information I have that from other sources said everybody stayed in cabins of one sort or another.
A young office clerk from Germany also travels in steerage. His name is Walter Trentapol, and this is one sea voyage he will never forget. October 9th. The Volturno is in the mid-Atlantic, 600 miles from where the Titanic went down the year before. Seas have been rough for the past few hours, but Captain Inch is not concerned. The Volturno has weathered many storms in her time, and she can weather this one. Most passengers are still asleep in their cabins when ship steward Willie Reiswich makes his rounds at 6 a.m. He finds nothing out of the ordinary. In her hold in the forward part of the ship, the Volturno carries a large cargo of chemicals, wines and liquors, straw mats, and barrels of oil. But there is something else there, waiting for its chance to escape. 6:40 a.m. A crew member reports a strong smell of smoke coming from the number 1 hold. Captain Inch is alerted while crew members spray water in the direction of the smoke.
First, the captain was informed that there was a fire. Said, let's not warn the passengers, we're trying to fight it.
In their cabin, Frida Greyboys and her 2 children hear the commotion.
They weren't the first ones to discover the fire, but when they learned about the fire, then my dad said that he went and knocked on cabin doors, waking up people to get them out of their cabins so they can get to safety.
Back in the hold, Willie Reiswich and the others are trying to put the fire out, but they are about to lose the battle.
A little after 7 o'clock, there was a terrific roar. A sheet of flame shot out that threw us all back. The tables and benches and steerage were blown up, and the bulkhead caved in so that we could see the flames in number 1 hold.
The captain realized that he needed help, and he turned to the wireless, which had recently figured so prominently in the story of the Titanic in an effort to bring other ships.
78 miles away, the Cunard passenger liner, the Carmania, receives the Volturno's first SOS. Her captain, James Barr, orders full steam ahead, but for some of the passengers and crew of the Volturno, that will be too late. As they join the stampede up the stairs, Frida Greyboys and her children feel the push of the crowd. Walter Trentapole sees fellow passengers trampled underfoot or dragged back so another can take their place.
Passengers came up and the fire just spread. At one point, I think there was nothing separating them just except one iron floor, and the rest was like a furnace burning there. Since the fire was at the forward end, so the passengers escaped to the back of the ship. There was panic, so some people started to jump overboard. People just preferred to die by drowning and die by fire.
With the storm still raging, Captain Inch orders the launch of several lifeboats. Chief Officer H.P. Miller is put in charge of the first one over the side.
One of the things that struck me is them putting those boats in the water with the seas being so heavy. It's extremely difficult to put a boat in the water in heavy seas.
As Miller's boat reaches the water, a wave flips it over. Officer Miller is able to climb back in with several others, but without oars to guide her, he can only hold on as the boat is swept out to sea. Other lifeboats meet a similar fate. One is crushed like an egg under the ship's hull. Another makes it to the water but follows Miller's boat out to sea and disappears. The attempt to launch the lifeboats in an angry sea costs more than 100 lives. Captain Inch receives word by wireless that the Cunard passenger liner, the Carmania, is on its way. The message may well be the Volturno's last. As fire claws its way across the Volturno, Walter Trentapole fights his way to the deck. He is shocked by the chaos he finds. The loss of the lifeboats pushes many passengers to the brink. In desperation, one woman jumps overboard with her baby.
There is also a story of a French young couple. They embraced, they gave each other a farewell kiss, and in an embrace they jumped overboard and drowned.
As hysteria sweeps through the crowd, Frida Greyboys is surprisingly calm.
She decided she wasn't going to risk her life, running like a lot of people were running. And she decided she wasn't going to do that. She was going to sit and wait it out until somebody came along and rescued them.
As more passengers push into the ship's aft, Frida realizes she must protect her son and daughter.
My grandmother then gathered him and my aunt up and took them back aft to the rope locker where they store the ropes and stuff. And so she hid them in there to be away from the crowd.
When she returns, Frida notices a change in the mood of those around her. The Carmania has been sighted on the horizon 4 hours after receiving the Volturno's SOS. As his ship positions itself for rescue operations, Carmania Captain James Barr orders the launch of one of his lifeboats, manned by a crew of 10.
They know the peril that the people in the Volturno were in, and they were willing to give their lives to attempt to get them off right away.
The lifeboat is buffeted by the raging sea. 7 out of the 10 oars are broken or lost. After 2 hours, it returns to the Carmania empty-handed.
It had to be a traumatic time for the people aboard the ship, and the rescuing people not being able to get to the other ship and get lines onto the other ship and things like that. I'm sure they were saying their prayers.
By 6 that evening, 3 more ships respond to the call. All try to lower lifeboats, but the seas are too rough. The third ship is the Kroonland, a passenger liner from the Red Star Fleet, also bound for New York from Antwerp. One of its passengers, the wife of First Officer H.P. Miller, watches the Volturno burn, unaware that her husband is already among the dead. By 6:30 p.m., brasswork and glass on the Volturno has melted, and much of the woodwork has burned and collapsed. Only a steel barrier separates the passengers on deck from the inferno seething in the hold below. In desperation, Captain Inch asks for volunteers to launch another lifeboat. His intent is to show the other ship captains that a boat can survive the boiling seas. There are 5 volunteers, including ship steward Willie Reiswitz. They battle wind and waves for over an hour, but eventually reach the Grosser Kurfürst.
They were put on board on a ladder, a rope ladder, which was left down. And immediately after, that lifeboat crushed against the big ship. They just managed to get there in time.
By 9 p.m., searchlights on the Carmania help illuminate the area as more ships answer the call. In total, 10 ships come to the rescue on their way to New York from Liverpool, Bremerhaven, and Le Havre, but they have all arrived too late to save the Volturno. October 9, 1913, 9:30 p.m. Another explosion rocks the Volturno as fire reaches explosives on the ship's bridge. In a panic, German office clerk Walter Trentapol jumps into the ocean with another passenger and a member of the crew.
And he first swam to the Grosser Kurfürst, the German ship. But no one heard him because of the sea being so wild.
Trentapol and the other men swim for the Carmania, but when a searchlight finds him in the water close to the ship, Walter Trentapol is alone.
And he managed to get on board. The others were just too fatigued and they just went with the current, so they didn't make it.
For those left on the Volturno, the night is long, dark, and frightening. For some, it is tragic.
And there was a woman carrying her baby in her arms that fell asleep against the rail. And when she woke up, the baby had gone. It had rolled off the ship.
Encouraged by the rescue of Trentapol and the others, several ships eventually send lifeboats close enough to the Volturno to urge survivors to jump.
There was a woman also with a child, and she threw her child overboard, hoping that it would go into the boat. It didn't, it fell into the sea. But there was one man in that lifeboat who reacted instantly, jumped in, and finally did save that small baby.
When morning arrives on October 10th, a firestorm still rages on the deck of the Volturno, but the storm at sea has passed. The oil tanker Narragansett begins pumping hundreds of tons of oil around the burning vessel.
The heavy weight of the oil keeps the water down and the waves from breaking too much. And then you're able to get your boats into the water better and with less chance of them being turned over. And after that happened, I guess then they were able to effect the rescue.
As Captain Inch begins separating the passengers into 2 groups, Frida Greyboys rushes to the Volturno's supply closet to retrieve her children.
They heard that when they were going to be rescued, that they were going to separate the men and the women. And so she dressed my dad up as a girl so that she can keep them together.
And she told me when they came to rescue, she had to go down on ropes. Her hands got raw, and the skin got raw from, climbing down, clasping the rope tight in her hands. It must have been a terrible experience. And she's very fortunate that she got off safely.
520 passengers and crew are taken off the Volturno that October morning. Captain Francis Inch and the 2 wireless operators are the last to leave.
And they were picked up by all those various ships, which then of course also had different destinations, so they wound up in different ports. Some were on the way to the United States, but most of them were on the way to Europe.
Frida Greyboys and her children are brought back to Rotterdam. Eventually, arrangements are made for them to take another ship to New York.
Something that I thought was a coincidence is that although my grandfather came over 7 months before them, they ended up both coming on the same ship. He came on the Campanello, and then because of the incident, here they come on the Campanello.
So many families were separated. So a mother might have lost her children and worried for days where they were.
A total of 136 lives are lost, but many believe the number would have been higher if not for firefighting efforts that kept the burning ship afloat. And if not for wireless technology, the fate of the Volturno would have been one of the world's great mysteries.
The need to have wireless, the need to call for assistance, which had been so heavily underscored with the loss of Titanic, was now augmented by the burning of Volturno and the rescue of so many people.
The cause of the fire is never determined, although speculation includes everything from spontaneous combustion to sabotage.
But it's reported that the crew had, I think, an argument over their wages or working conditions with the owners. And the owner then reported that we got threatening letters, and just 7 days after that letter, the Volturno gets on fire in mid-Atlantic.
7 days after the rescue, the Volturno sinks into the ocean to its final resting place, but its legacy lives on.
I think one of the things they learned from the Volturno disaster, you don't take a dangerous cargo like volatile chemicals and easily burnable materials and put them on a ship with so many hundreds of people. Ultimately, there came a segregation of dangerous cargoes and passengers that hitherto had not existed.